A soft drizzle blanketed the countryside as the train snaked its way through lush green hills. Inside the first-class compartment, the atmosphere was cozy, with the gentle hum of conversation and the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Among the passengers was a woman in her mid-30s, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. Her name was Sylvia, and she carried an air of confidence mixed with the sharpness of someone unafraid to speak her mind. Across from her sat a man in a plain hoodie and jeans, his face partially obscured by a baseball cap. He seemed nondescript, his attention focused on a tablet in his hands. Yet, there was something about his quiet demeanor that subtly invited curiosity. As the train sped along, a discussion in the compartment veered into heated territory, the ethics of billionaires. The topic was sparked by a news article someone had been reading aloud. "Take Elon Musk," Sylvia suddenly interjected, her voice cutting through the air with the precision of a scalpel. "A man who flaunts his wealth while pretending to care about humanity. Do any of you actually believe he's the savior of the world, or that all his grand talk about Mars means anything?" The man across from her shifted slightly, his grip tightening on his tablet. He looked up briefly, his blue-gray eyes flickering with a hint of recognition, but he said nothing. Encouraged by the silence, Sylvia pressed on, her words laced with biting sarcasm. "He's just another billionaire feeding his ego. I'd bet my last dollar he's never truly helped anyone without expecting a headline in return." The compartment grew uncomfortably quiet. Other passengers exchanged awkward glances, clearly unsure of how to respond. Finally, the man spoke, his voice calm and unassuming. "That's quite an assumption, don't you think?" Sylvia smirked, folding her arms. "Oh. And who are you to defend him? A fanboy who thinks he's going to get a Tesla in his driveway by idolizing him?" He tilted his head slightly, studying her for a moment before responding. "I'm just someone who believes there's more to people than what we see in headlines." The tension in the air thickened as Sylvia chuckled dryly. "Well, someone should remind Mr. Musk that actions speak louder than tweets." The man didn't reply immediately. Instead, he leaned back in his seat, his expression unreadable. "Sometimes actions go unnoticed," he said quietly, "because they're not done for applause." Before Sylvia could formulate a retort, a sudden jolt shook the train. The lights flickered, and a muffled announcement crackled over the intercom, informing passengers that the train had made an emergency stop due to technical difficulties. The interruption gave everyone a moment to breathe, but Sylvia couldn't help stealing glances at the man. Something about his quiet confidence unsettled her, yet intrigued her at the same time. As the train remained stationary, a child's distressed cry echoed from a nearby compartment. Without hesitation, the man stood, sliding the cap off his head as he walked toward the sound. Sylvia's eyes widened as recognition hit her like a freight train. It wasn't just the stranger in the hoodie. It was Elon Musk. Sylvia sat frozen in her seat, her thoughts swirling in disbelief. Could it really be him? The man she had just publicly criticized was now striding purposefully toward the sound of the crying child. Her mind replayed the way he had calmly defended the actions of someone she assumed he didn't know. But he knew. Of course, he knew. Meanwhile, Elon, or rather, the man Sylvia now recognized as Elon Musk, knelt beside a boy who had been clutching his ankle in pain. The child's mother, flustered and visibly distressed, was trying to comfort him while fumbling with her phone to call for assistance. "Let me take a look," Elon said gently, his tone reassuring. The mother hesitated, her eyes darting to his face, and then widened in shock. "Wait, aren't you?" Later, Elon interrupted softly, motioning toward the child. "Let's focus on him first." He carefully examined the boy's ankle, asking him to wiggle his toes and press lightly against Elon's hands. Sylvia, who had edged closer without realizing it, overheard him giving calm instructions and noticed his surprisingly adept manner. "It's just a sprain," Elon concluded, looking up at the mother. "He'll be fine, but he should rest it for now." The mother stammered her thanks, clearly overwhelmed, as Elon reached into his bag and handed over a small ice pack he had pulled from a portable first aid kit. "Keep this on for a bit," he said with a small smile, rising to his feet. "And don't let him walk on it for a while." As Elon returned to his seat, Sylvia stood rooted in place, struggling to reconcile the man she had criticized with the one who had just stepped in to help without hesitation. Her curiosity got the better of her. "Why would you carry a first aid kit?" she asked, her voice almost accusatory. Elon shrugged, settling back into his seat. "You'd be surprised how often it comes in handy." Sylvia raised an eyebrow, unable to suppress her disbelief. "So, you're just prepared for everything, aren't you?" "Not everything," Elon replied, a trace of humor in his tone. "But I like to try." His nonchalant response only fueled Sylvia's frustration. She dropped into the seat across from him, her earlier bravado slipping as curiosity crept in. "Why didn't you say anything?" she demanded. "When I was, well, talking about you." Elon glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "What would it have changed? You seemed pretty set in your opinion." Sylvia opened her mouth to argue but faltered. He was right, she had been. But now, she wasn't so sure. Before she could respond, the train's intercom buzzed again. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. We're working to resolve the issue, but it may take some time. Please remain seated and comfortable." The passengers groaned collectively, but Elon seemed unbothered. He glanced out the window, his demeanor calm, as though delays were nothing more than opportunities for reflection. Sylvia's frustration bubbled to the surface again. "You're awfully calm about all this," she said. Elon turned to her, his eyes locking with hers. "Getting upset wouldn't fix anything, would it?" Sylvia bristled. "It must be easy to stay calm when you can throw money at problems." Elon's expression softened, not with amusement, but with something more nuanced. "Is that really what you think?" Sylvia didn't answer. She didn't need to. He leaned forward slightly, his voice quiet but steady. "Money doesn't fix everything. Sometimes, it just buys you the tools to try harder." The weight of his words hung between them, leaving Sylvia unsure of what to say. But before she could muster a response, a train conductor appeared, calling for assistance with a woman in another car who had fallen ill. Without hesitation, Elon stood up again, leaving Sylvia to wrestle with her conflicted thoughts. The man she thought she knew seemed to grow more enigmatic with every passing moment. Sylvia watched as Elon disappeared into the next compartment, her mind teeming with questions. The man she had criticized so freely just minutes ago seemed to carry himself with an unshakable calm, stepping up to help whenever the opportunity arose. And yet, the more she observed, the less she understood. Why would someone as wealthy and powerful as Elon Musk bother with something as trivial as assisting strangers on a train? Unable to sit still, Sylvia stood and followed him. As she entered the adjacent compartment, she saw Elon kneeling beside an elderly woman whose pale complexion suggested she was unwell. A conductor stood nearby, looking relieved to have someone take charge. "She's diabetic," Elon was saying, glancing at the woman's handbag. "Does she have insulin in here?" The conductor handed over the bag, and Elon rummaged through it, his movements efficient but gentle. He found a small case containing the necessary supplies and set about preparing an injection. "Does he know what he's doing?" someone whispered nearby. Sylvia's curiosity intensified. "Do you?" she blurted out. Elon didn't look up, his focus unwavering as he carefully administered the insulin. "I have 6 kids," he replied evenly. "You learn a thing or two about emergencies." The passengers around him exchanged surprised glances. Once he finished, the elderly woman's color began to return, and she gave a weak but grateful smile. "Thank you," she murmured. Elon smiled warmly. "You're welcome. Rest now. We'll make sure you're okay until help arrives." As he stood, brushing off his hands, Sylvia approached him. You could have let someone else handle that, she said, her tone bordering on skeptical. Why didn't you? Elon tilted his head, considering her question. If you see a problem and you can help, why wouldn't you? Sylvia frowned. That's an awfully idealistic answer. He chuckled softly. Maybe. But idealism isn't so bad when it gets things done, is it? Sylvia fell silent, unsure how to respond. Elon's demeanor was throwing her off balance. She had come prepared to argue against a caricature of a billionaire, not face a man who seemed genuinely thoughtful and practical. As they returned to their compartment, Sylvia decided she needed answers. You know, she began cautiously, people like me don't think highly of billionaires. We think you hoard wealth, ignore real problems, and live in a bubble. But you don't seem to fit that mold, at least, not entirely. Elon smirked faintly as he resumed his seat. And now you're wondering if your assumptions were wrong? Sylvia bristled at his directness but nodded. I suppose I am. So, what's the truth, then? Why are you really here on a train like this? Elon leaned back, his eyes scanning the compartment as though he were looking for something, or someone. Then, after a moment's pause, he answered. I'm here because someone asked for help, he said simply. Sylvia blinked, startled by the honesty in his tone. Help with what? That, Elon said, pointing toward the far end of the compartment where a young man was seated, his head buried in his hands. His name's Adam. He doesn't know I'm here for him yet, but he will soon. Sylvia glanced at Adam, confused. Who is he to you? Someone who sent a letter, Elon replied. A stranger with a problem that spoke to me. I wanted to hear his story. Sylvia's skepticism flared again. A letter? You expect me to believe that you, one of the busiest people in the world, read random letters from strangers? Elon shrugged. Not all of them. But some catch my attention. Adam's did. Sylvia didn't know whether to be impressed or incredulous. What kind of problem would make you drop everything and board a train? Elon's gaze turned serious. The kind that reminds you why you do what you do. The kind that keeps you up at night. The weight of his words sent a shiver down Sylvia's spine. For the first time, she began to realize that this wasn't just another journey. There was something bigger at play, something she was only beginning to glimpse. Sylvia couldn't take her eyes off Adam, the young man at the far end of the compartment. His hunched shoulders and downcast eyes painted a picture of someone carrying a weight far heavier than he could bear. So, what did this letter say? She asked Elon, her voice quieter now, almost hesitant. Elon reached into the pocket of his jacket and pulled out a creased piece of paper. He unfolded it carefully, as though it held something fragile. For a moment, he seemed lost in thought, his eyes scanning the familiar words. Then he handed the letter to Sylvia. She hesitated before taking it, unsure if she was ready to delve into the mystery surrounding this enigmatic stranger. But curiosity won out, and she unfolded the letter. Dear Mr. Musk. I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I don't know where else to turn. My name is Adam Grayson. I'm 22, and I've spent most of my life trying to support my younger sister, Lily, who's been battling a rare heart condition since she was 5. We lost our parents in a car accident when I was 17, and since then, it's just been the two of us. I've tried to give her everything she needs, medication, doctor visits, some sense of a normal childhood, but it's been impossible to keep up. I work 2 jobs, but every month, we fall further behind. Last week, Lily's doctor told us she needs an experimental surgery. Without it, she won't survive another year. The problem is, the surgery costs more than I could save in a lifetime. I'm not writing to ask you for money, I wouldn't dare. I'm writing because I've read about how you solve problems, how you think outside the box. I thought maybe, just maybe, you could offer some advice. Because honestly, Mr. Musk, I'm out of ideas. Thank you for reading this, if you do. I hope you'll at least think about Lily. She's the bravest person I've ever known. Sincerely. Adam Grayson. Sylvia finished reading, her throat tight and her heart heavy. She glanced up at Elon, who was watching her with an expression that was unreadable but undeniably earnest. You came all this way, she murmured, because of this? Elon nodded, his voice quiet but firm. Because sometimes, a problem doesn't need money or technology, it needs a person to show up. Sylvia struggled to process the depth of his response. For all her skepticism, she couldn't deny the gravity of the letter or the genuine concern in Elon's demeanor. So, what's your plan? She asked, her voice tinged with both curiosity and apprehension. Elon's lips curved into a faint smile. First, I'm going to talk to him. Then, we'll figure it out together. Sylvia shook her head, still grappling with the situation. You make it sound so simple. It's not, Elon admitted. But sometimes, the hardest problems start with the simplest steps. As if on cue, Adam shifted in his seat, glancing nervously around the compartment. His eyes landed on Elon, and for a brief moment, they locked. A flicker of recognition passed across Adam's face, followed by disbelief. Elon stood, pocketing the letter, and walked toward the young man. Sylvia hesitated, then followed, unable to tear herself away from the unfolding scene. Adam Grayson? Elon asked gently, stopping a few steps away from the young man. Adam's eyes widened. Why yes. Elon extended a hand, his expression warm and reassuring. I'm Elon Musk. I read your letter. For a moment, Adam stared at him, as if trying to decide whether this was some elaborate prank. Then, slowly, he shook Elon's hand, his voice trembling. You're really him. I am, Elon replied. And I'm here to help. Sylvia watched as Adam's composure cracked, tears welling in his eyes. The weight of his struggles, of years spent fighting an uphill battle, seemed to catch up to him all at once. I didn't think anyone would actually, Adam's voice broke, and he covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking. Elon placed a comforting hand on the young man's shoulder. Take your time, he said softly. We'll figure this out together. Sylvia stood a few steps back, her chest tightening as she witnessed the raw humanity of the moment. Whatever she had thought about Elon Musk before, she could no longer deny the sincerity of his actions. But she couldn't help wondering, how far was he willing to go to help Adam? And what challenges lay ahead for all of them? As the train rumbled back to life and resumed its journey, the compartment fell into an uneasy quiet. Adam sat across from Elon, his hand still trembling slightly as he clutched a cup of tea a kind passenger had brought him. Sylvia lingered nearby, pretending to check her phone while shamelessly eavesdropping. I don't even know what to say, Adam finally managed, his voice raw with emotion. I wrote that letter because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't think anyone would actually read it, let alone you. Elon gave a small, reassuring smile. Well, I read it. And now I'm here. Let's talk about Lily, tell me everything. Adam took a shaky breath, his words spilling out like water through a broken dam. He talked about his sister's condition, the endless medical appointments, and the crushing weight of trying to be both a caregiver and a provider. He spoke of the experimental surgery, a new technique developed by a leading cardiologist in Germany, and how it was their only hope. It costs $400,000, Adam said, his voice faltering. I've managed to raise a little through crowdfunding, but it's nowhere near enough. And the clock is ticking. Elon leaned back in his seat, his fingers steepled in thought. The money is one issue, he said, his tone measured, but let's focus on logistics first. What's the timeline for this surgery? How soon does it need to happen? Adam hesitated. The doctor said it needs to be within the next 6 weeks, or it might be too late. But, he trailed off, his face clouding with doubt. But? Elon prompted. Adam looked down at his hands. Even if I had the money, I don't know how I'd get her to Germany. She's too weak to travel alone, and I can't leave my job for that long. It's like, every solution leads to another problem. Sylvia, unable to hold back any longer, interjected. You're talking like this is impossible, but you've got Elon Musk sitting across from you. If anyone can solve this, it's him. Adam blinked at her, as though only now noticing her presence. I don't even know who you are. Sylvia, she said briskly, extending a hand. I'm just, along for the ride, I guess. Adam shook her hand hesitantly, then turned back to Elon. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but this is my burden to carry. You don't have to. Elon held up a hand, cutting him off gently. Adam, let me ask you something. If Lily were in my position, if she had the resources to help someone she'd never met, do you think she'd hesitate? Adam opened his mouth, then closed it, his eyes filling with tears. No, he admitted. Then don't hesitate to let me help, Elon said firmly. This isn't just about money. It's about using what I have to make a difference. That's why I'm here. Sylvia found herself unexpectedly moved by his words. For all her earlier cynicism, she couldn't deny the authenticity in Elon's actions. So, what's the plan? She asked, her voice steady. Elon smiled faintly. First, we'll get in touch with the doctor in Germany and confirm the surgery schedule. Then we'll figure out the logistics, travel, accommodations, medical support for Lily during the trip. And finally, we'll deal with the financials. Adam looked overwhelmed, his face a mix of hope and disbelief. You really think this can work? Elon nodded confidently. It will work. But we'll need to move fast. Sylvia crossed her arms, her mind already buzzing with questions. And what happens after the surgery? Adam can't just drop everything and move to Germany. Good point, Elon acknowledged. We'll need to set up long-term support for Lily's recovery. I'll work with my foundation to make sure they're both taken care of. Sylvia arched an eyebrow. You have a foundation? Elon gave her a wry look. You think I don't? She had no response to that, so she remained silent. The train began to slow as it approached its next station, and Elon stood, pulling out his phone. I'll make some calls, he said. Adam, sit tight. We've got this. As Elon stepped away, Sylvia turned to Adam, who looked like he was still trying to process everything. Is he always like this? Adam asked, his voice tinged with awe. Sylvia hesitated before answering, her own feelings still conflicted. I don't know. But I think we're about to find out. As the train pulled into the station, Elon returned to his seat, a focused expression on his face. I've spoken to my team, he began, addressing Adam and Sylvia. They're reaching out to the doctor in Germany to confirm the surgery schedule. We'll have answers within a few hours. Adam nodded, though his face betrayed his lingering doubt. I don't even know how to thank you for this. Elon smiled faintly. You don't need to thank me. Just focus on Lily. The train lurched forward again, resuming its journey, but the tension in the compartment remained palpable. Sylvia couldn't shake the feeling that they were rushing headlong into a storm of complications. So, she said, breaking the silence, what happens if the doctor says no? Or if the surgery isn't an option anymore? Elon glanced at her, his expression calm but resolute. Then we pivot. There's always another solution. You just have to keep looking until you find it. Sylvia arched an eyebrow. That sounds nice in theory, but real life doesn't always work that way. It doesn't, Elon admitted. But giving up isn't an option either. Before Sylvia could press further, Adam's phone buzzed. He fumbled to answer it, his face lighting up with relief as he recognized the caller. It's Lily, he said, excusing himself to step away. As Adam walked to the end of the car, Sylvia turned to Elon. You're throwing yourself into this without even knowing the full picture. What if there's more to this than Adam's letting on? Elon studied her for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly. What are you getting at? Sylvia hesitated, choosing her words carefully. I'm not saying Adam's lying, but desperation can make people do things they wouldn't normally do. What if there's more to his situation than he's told us? Elon's expression softened, but his tone remained firm. If there is, we'll deal with it. But helping someone doesn't mean waiting for them to be perfect. It means showing up when they need you. Sylvia leaned back in her seat, mulling over his words. She hated to admit it, but there was something disarmingly logical about his perspective. A few minutes later, Adam returned, his face a mixture of worry and determination. Lily's feeling better today, he said, sinking into his seat. But she's scared. She knows the surgery is her only chance, and the waiting is killing her. We won't make her wait long, Elon assured him. But as the train continued its journey, Sylvia couldn't shake the nagging feeling that their path was far from clear. Helping Lily might be the goal, but the road to get there was bound to be fraught with complications, and she wasn't sure if Adam or Elon were truly prepared for what lay ahead. The rhythmic clatter of the train blended with the low hum of conversations around them, but Sylvia's mind was racing. She couldn't shake the questions bubbling beneath the surface. Adam's story was compelling, sure, but something about it didn't sit right with her. So, Sylvia said, leaning forward slightly, what happens if Lily's condition worsens before you can arrange the surgery? Adam's expression darkened, his shoulders tensing. I don't know. That's why this has to work. It's her only chance. Elon studied Adam intently, his gaze steady but unreadable. We'll find a way, he said. But Sylvia has a point, what other complications are we facing? Is there anything else we should know? Adam hesitated, his eyes darting between the two of them. For a moment, it looked as though he might say something, but then he shook his head. No, that's it. Just the money and the logistics. Sylvia frowned, sensing the hesitation in his voice. Before she could press further, Elon's phone buzzed. He answered it quickly, turning slightly away from them as he spoke in a low tone. Yes, that's right, he said. Coordinate with the team in Germany. I'll need an update on their availability within the hour. And check on the travel arrangements, I want a medical escort ready if we need it. Sylvia watched him, her skepticism softening as she took in his calm efficiency. For someone who often seemed larger than life, Elon was remarkably grounded in moments like these. As Elon ended the call, he turned back to Adam. Good news, he said. The doctor can see Lily within 2 weeks. We'll finalize the exact date once we confirm her travel arrangements. Adam's eyes filled with gratitude, but there was still a flicker of unease in his expression. Thank you, he said quietly. I can't believe this is actually happening. Sylvia wasn't convinced. She could sense that Adam was holding something back, and it gnawed at her. Adam, she said, her tone firm but not unkind, if there's more to this story, you need to tell us. Now. Adam froze, his face paling. I don't know what you mean, he stammered. Sylvia folded her arms, her gaze unwavering. I mean, there's something you're not saying. And if we're going to help you, we need the full picture. Elon remained silent, watching the exchange with a thoughtful expression. Adam's hands clenched into fists, his knuckles turning white. It's not about Lily, he blurted out, his voice cracking. Sylvia's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Adam took a shaky breath, his eyes filled with shame. I've been doing everything I can to take care of her, but I made some bad decisions. Borrowed money from the wrong people. Now they're threatening to come after us if I don't pay them back. The air in the compartment seemed to grow heavier. Elon's expression didn't change, but there was a subtle shift in his posture, an intensity that made it clear he was processing this new information carefully. How much do you owe? He asked, his voice calm but firm. Adam looked down, his voice barely above a whisper. $50,000. Sylvia's jaw dropped. $50,000. Are you serious? And you didn't think to mention this earlier? I didn't know how. Adam exclaimed, his voice breaking. You already think I'm a failure. How was I supposed to tell you I made everything worse? Elon held up a hand, silencing them both. This doesn't change our goal, he said. But it does change how we approach it. Adam, do these people know about Lily? Adam nodded miserably. They know everything. They've even threatened to interfere with her care if I don't pay up soon. Sylvia felt a chill run down her spine. This just got a lot more complicated. Elon's eyes narrowed, his mind clearly racing. Do you know how to contact them? Yes, Adam said reluctantly. Good, Elon said, standing. Then we're going to deal with this, now. Sylvia stared at him, equal parts impressed and incredulous. You can't be serious. You're going to confront loan sharks. Elon's smile was faint but determined. When you build rockets, you learn to handle explosive situations. Despite herself, Sylvia couldn't help but admire his nerve. But as they prepared to leave the train at the next station, she wondered if even Elon Musk was ready for the storm they were about to face. The train hissed to a stop at the next station, and Elon, Adam, and Sylvia stepped onto the platform. The once cozy atmosphere of the train was replaced by the cold reality of the situation. Adam's hands trembled as he pulled a scrap of paper from his pocket, scribbled with a phone number and a name, Victor. Victor is the one who manages the debt, Adam said, his voice shaking. But he's not someone you can just negotiate with. He doesn't care about excuses, only results. Elon studied the paper, his expression unreadable. Where does he operate? Adam hesitated, then pointed to a nearby street leading into the heart of the city. He's got a place about 3 blocks from here, a cafe, but it's really a front. His guys are always there. Sylvia glanced at Elon, her skepticism flaring. You're not seriously thinking about walking into a criminal's headquarters, are you? This isn't a boardroom negotiation. Elon's lips quirked in a faint smile. You're right, it's not. But I've handled worse. Sylvia threw up her hands. This isn't a movie, Musk. You can't just waltz in and talk your way out of this. Watch me, Elon said simply, tucking the scrap of paper into his pocket and starting down the street. Adam and Sylvia exchanged nervous glances before hurrying to catch up. The cafe came into view a few minutes later, an unassuming corner establishment with dimly lit windows and a flickering neon sign. Inside, a handful of men in leather jackets sat at scattered tables, their postures relaxed but their eyes alert. Victor was easy to spot, a heavy-set man in his 40s with a sharp suit and an even sharper gaze. He sat at the back of the cafe, flanked by 2 hulking bodyguards. Elon walked in first, his confident stride belying the tension in the air. Adam and Sylvia followed, both looking like they would rather be anywhere else. Victor's eyes narrowed as they approached. Well, he drawled, his voice dripping with amusement. This is a surprise. Adam Grayson, bringing friends to my doorstep. That's bold. Elon stepped forward, his calm demeanor radiating authority. I'm here to talk about Adam's debt. Victor's gaze shifted to Elon, his expression darkening. And who are you, exactly? Elon Musk, he replied, his voice steady. Victor barked out a laugh, glancing at his bodyguards as if to share the joke. Elon Musk? The billionaire? You expect me to believe that? Sylvia stepped forward, her voice sharp. It's him. Believe it or not, he's here to fix the mess your threats have made. Victor's amusement faded, replaced by suspicion. All right, let's say I believe you. What's your angle, Musk? You don't look like the type to get involved in small-time debts. I'm here because Adam's trying to save his sister's life, Elon said, his tone firm. And I'm offering you a way to settle this without causing more harm. Victor leaned back in his chair, studying Elon intently. And what exactly are you offering? Elon's gaze didn't waver. The full $50,000. No interest, no threats, and no further interference with Adam or his family. Victor's eyebrows shot up. Just like that? You're willing to pay off his debt without asking for anything in return? Yes, Elon said simply. The cafe fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Victor's lips curled into a sly smile. That's a tempting offer. But what's to stop me from taking your money and keeping Adam on the hook for more? Elon's expression hardened, his calm resolve turning steely. Me. Victor chuckled darkly. And why would I be afraid of you? Because I'm not just paying off a debt, Elon said, his voice low but filled with authority. I'm buying your silence and your cooperation. If you cross me, it won't end well for you. The room seemed to hold its breath. Victor's smile faltered as he studied Elon's unflinching gaze. Finally, he leaned forward, his tone calculating. All right, Musk. You've got my attention. Bring the money, and we'll call it square. But remember, this is my world, not yours. Elon nodded. I'll be back in an hour. As they left the cafe, Adam let out a shaky breath. I can't believe you did that, he said. He could have had us all killed. Elon glanced at him. He could have tried. Sylvia shook her head, her expression a mixture of awe and exasperation. You've got a death wish, don't you? No, Elon replied, his lips quirking in a faint smile. Just a habit of solving problems. But as they walked away from the cafe, Sylvia couldn't shake the feeling that the most dangerous part of their journey was still ahead. The group moved briskly through the crowded streets, tension simmering in the air. Elon seemed unfazed, his mind clearly focused on the next step. Adam, however, looked like he might collapse at any moment, his hands wringing nervously as they approached a quiet corner. Sylvia was caught between admiration for Elon's nerve and disbelief at his audacity. What's the plan now? She asked as they stopped beside a small park bench. Elon pulled out his phone and tapped a few keys. I've arranged for the funds to be transferred to a secure account. It'll be ready by the time we get back to the cafe. Adam's eyes widened. You're just paying it? Just like that? Elon glanced at him, his expression calm but firm. It's not about the money, Adam. It's about making sure you and Lily are safe. We can't move forward if this threat is hanging over you. Sylvia crossed her arms, skeptical. And what happens if Victor decides he doesn't care about your threats? He could still come after them later. Elon smiled faintly. That's why we're not just paying him off. We're making it clear that any further action will have consequences. Adam swallowed hard, his face pale. What kind of consequences? The kind he won't want to risk, Elon said simply. Sylvia sighed, shaking her head. You really think this is going to work? That guy didn't look like someone who plays fair. He doesn't, Elon admitted. But even people like Victor understand leverage. And right now, I have more of it than he does. As the hour drew to a close, the three of them returned to the cafe. Victor was waiting, his bodyguards flanking him like sentinels. He leaned back in his chair, his expression a mix of curiosity and amusement. Well, Musk, he drawled. Did you bring my money? Elon approached the table and placed his phone on it, pulling up a transaction confirmation. The funds are ready. All I need is your word that this ends here, no more threats, no more interference. Victor picked up the phone, scanning the screen with a calculating gaze. After a moment, he leaned back, his lips curling into a smirk. You've got guts, I'll give you that, he said. But let's make one thing clear, this doesn't make us friends. If Adam screws up again, there's not going to be a billionaire riding to the rescue. Elon's expression didn't waver. He won't screw up again. And if you even think about going after him or Lily, you'll find out exactly what happens when you cross me. The air in the cafe grew heavy with tension. Victor's smile faded, replaced by a hard, calculating look. For a moment, it seemed like he might push back, but then he chuckled darkly. Fair enough, he said. The debt's cleared. But remember, Musk, this is my world, not yours. Stay out of it. Elon nodded. As long as you stay out of theirs. Victor motioned to one of his bodyguards, who handed him a tablet. He tapped a few buttons, confirming the transaction, then tossed the device onto the table. Pleasure doing business, he said with a mocking grin. Elon didn't respond. He simply turned and walked out, Adam and Sylvia following close behind. Outside, Adam collapsed onto a nearby bench, his hands shaking. I can't believe that just happened, he said, his voice trembling. It's over, Elon said calmly. Now we focus on Lily. Sylvia stared at him, her expression a mixture of awe and disbelief. You just walked into a den of criminals, paid off a massive debt, and walked out like it was a board meeting. Who does that? Elon shrugged. Sometimes the only way to solve a problem is to face it head-on. Sylvia couldn't help but laugh, though it was tinged with exasperation. You're unbelievable, Musk. Adam looked up at Elon, his eyes filled with gratitude. I don't know how to thank you for this. You already have, Elon said, his voice gentle. By fighting for your sister. Let's make sure she gets the care she needs. As they walked away from the cafe, Sylvia found herself looking at Elon in a new light. For all his fame, wealth, and eccentricity, he had just done something few people would dare to attempt. And somehow, she had a feeling the most extraordinary part of the journey was still to come. The group made their way back toward the train station, their steps quicker now, propelled by a mix of relief and urgency. The debt was handled, but the real challenge, saving Lily, still lay ahead. Adam clutched his phone tightly, his grip betraying the lingering anxiety etched into his every movement. So what happens now? Sylvia asked, breaking the silence. Elon's stride didn't falter as he replied. Now we focus on logistics. Adam, do you have Lily's medical records with you? Adam nodded. I have them on a flash drive in my bag. I keep everything organized in case we need to see a specialist. Good, Elon said. We'll send them to the doctor in Germany to ensure nothing delays the surgery. Sylvia glanced at Elon, her skepticism softening into genuine curiosity. You've done this sort of thing before, haven't you? Elon gave her a small smile. Not exactly this, but I'm used to solving complicated problems. It's just a matter of breaking them down into manageable steps. Sylvia shook her head, a faint smile tugging at her lips. You make it sound so simple. Most problems are, Elon replied. Once you know where to start. Back at the station, Elon made a flurry of calls, coordinating with his team. A private jet was being prepped to take Adam and Lily to Germany. A medical team was on standby, ready to escort them if necessary. Every piece of the puzzle was falling into place, but the clock was ticking. Adam watched Elon work with a mixture of awe and disbelief. I don't understand why you're doing all this, he said finally. You don't even know us. Elon paused, his phone still in hand, and looked at Adam. I don't need to know you to care. What matters is that you asked for help, and I could do something about it. Adam's voice wavered. You make it sound so easy, but it's not. Most people wouldn't even read a letter like mine, let alone act on it. That's the problem, Elon said quietly. Too many people think someone else will step up. But when everyone thinks that way, nothing gets done. Sylvia watched the exchange, her chest tightening. For all her earlier doubts, she couldn't deny the sincerity in Elon's words. An hour later, the group was on their way to the airfield, where Elon's private jet awaited. Adam clutched his bag tightly, his face a mix of hope and fear. Sylvia sat beside him, her expression uncharacteristically thoughtful. As they approached the plane, Adam hesitated. "I don't even know how to explain this to Lily," he said. "She's been through so much already. I don't want to give her false hope." Elon turned to him, his gaze steady. "It's not false hope, Adam. This is real. She's going to get the care she needs." Adam nodded, though his hands still trembled. The plane's engines roared to life as they boarded. Elon quickly settled into a seat, pulling out his laptop to finalize the remaining details. Sylvia and Adam sat nearby, watching as the ground fell away beneath them. As the jet soared through the sky, Sylvia leaned toward Elon. "You're throwing a lot of resources at this," she said, her tone probing. "Is this really just about helping one family?" Elon didn't look up from his laptop as he replied. "It starts with one family. But every problem you solve has a ripple effect. You never know how far it'll reach." Sylvia sat back, her mind racing. For all her earlier assumptions about him, she was beginning to see Elon in a new light, not as a billionaire with a savior complex, but as someone who genuinely believed in the power of action. As the plane continued its journey, Adam finally allowed himself to hope. For the first time in years, it felt like he wasn't fighting this battle alone. But Sylvia couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was far from over. Challenges had a way of reappearing, and she suspected this one would be no different. The hum of the jet engines filled the cabin as the plane streaked through the sky. Adam sat with his hands folded tightly in his lap, his eyes fixed on the small window. Below, the patchwork of land blurred into an indistinct tapestry, a fitting metaphor for the chaotic whirlwind his life had become. Sylvia leaned back in her seat, watching Elon as he worked. His laptop screen was a flurry of charts, emails, and logistics spreadsheets. Every so often, he would pause, pick up his phone, and issue calm but decisive instructions to someone on the other end of the line. It was mesmerizing to watch him operate, focused, methodical, as though every detail were part of a larger puzzle he was determined to solve. "So," Sylvia said, breaking the silence, "how do you stay so composed? Most people would have cracked under the pressure of today alone." Elon glanced at her, his lips quirking into a faint smile. "Pressure is just part of the job. You learn to manage it, or it manages you." Sylvia raised an eyebrow. "And this?" She gestured to the cabin around them. "This isn't your job. It's not a press conference or a product launch. It's messy, unpredictable, and way out of your control." Elon leaned back, his gaze thoughtful. "You're right. But sometimes, stepping out of your comfort zone is the only way to make a real difference. Life isn't clean or predictable, and that's okay. You adapt." Sylvia's skepticism softened. For all his confidence, there was something undeniably human about his approach, a willingness to face uncertainty head-on, no matter the cost. Adam's phone buzzed, jolting him out of his reverie. He fumbled to answer it, his voice trembling as he said, "Hello?" "Adam," came a soft, familiar voice. His breath caught in his throat. "Lily. Are you okay? How are you feeling?" "I'm fine," she said, though her voice was weak. "But Adam, what's going on?" "A nurse came by and said someone's arranging a flight for me." "Is this real?" Adam's throat tightened as he struggled to find the words. "It's real," he said finally. "We're getting you to Germany for the surgery. Everything's going to be okay." Lily was silent for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely audible. "How did you do it?" I thought we couldn't afford it." Adam's eyes filled with tears. "It wasn't me. Someone stepped in to help." "Who?" Adam glanced at Elon, who was engrossed in his work. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." As the plane began its descent toward their destination, the cabin grew quieter. Adam clutched his phone tightly, replaying his conversation with Lily in his mind. Sylvia tapped idly at her phone, though her focus was clearly elsewhere. Elon closed his laptop, finally allowing himself a moment of rest. He looked at Adam, his expression gentle but firm. "This is the start of something better," he said. "For you and Lily both." Adam nodded, though his face was still a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. "I don't know how to thank you," he said again. "You already have," Elon replied. "By being here, by fighting for her. That's all anyone can ask." Sylvia watched the exchange, her earlier doubts fading further with each passing moment. Whatever she had thought about Elon Musk before this journey, she was beginning to see him in a new light, a man who didn't just talk about change, but acted on it, no matter how messy or unpredictable the circumstances. As the plane touched down, the group braced themselves for the next leg of the journey. The hardest part was still ahead, but for the first time, it felt like they had a real shot at overcoming it. The wheels of the jet screeched against the tarmac as they touched down. Outside the window, the city sprawled into view, a bustling hub of industry and life. The team waiting on the runway was already in motion, led by a doctor in a crisp white coat. As they disembarked, Elon stepped forward, shaking hands with the doctor. "Dr. Weiss," he said, his tone brisk but warm. "Thank you for meeting us." Dr. Weiss nodded, his expression serious. "We received the medical records you sent. Lily's condition is critical, but the surgery is still a viable option. Timing will be everything." Adam, clutching his bag tightly, stepped forward hesitantly. "You're sure you can help her?" The doctor's gaze softened as he looked at Adam. "We'll do everything we can. Your sister is a fighter, that much is clear from her records." Adam nodded, his throat too tight to respond. Sylvia lingered at the edge of the group, taking in the scene. The precision and efficiency of the operation were impressive, but what struck her most was Elon's quiet determination. He wasn't commanding attention or basking in gratitude, he was focused entirely on the next step, as though the outcome was all that mattered. The hospital was a state-of-the-art facility, its gleaming hallways buzzing with activity. As the group followed Dr. Weiss toward the cardiology wing, Adam's phone buzzed again. He answered it quickly, his voice filled with both relief and apprehension. "Lily? We're here. The doctor's waiting for you." "I'm scared," came her soft reply. "I know," Adam said, his voice trembling. "But these people are the best. They're going to take care of you, I promise." Sylvia, walking beside him, couldn't help but notice the strain in his expression. She leaned in slightly. "She'll be okay, Adam," she said, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. Adam glanced at her, offering a small, grateful nod. As the preparations for Lily's transfer were finalized, Elon excused himself to make a call. Sylvia followed, her curiosity outweighing her hesitation. "You're coordinating everything from here?" she asked, leaning against the wall. Elon nodded, his phone pressed to his ear. "There are still details to iron out, her recovery plan, support for Adam, and long-term care. I don't want them falling through the cracks." Sylvia studied him, her skepticism melting away completely. "Do you always do this? Drop everything to help strangers?" Elon ended the call, slipping his phone into his pocket. "Not always," he admitted. "But sometimes, the right story finds you, and you can't ignore it." Sylvia tilted her head, intrigued. "And what happens when it doesn't work out? When the story doesn't have a happy ending?" Elon's expression turned thoughtful. "You keep trying. Even if you can't fix everything, doing something is always better than doing nothing." Sylvia looked away, uncharacteristically silent. For all her sharp edges and pointed questions, she couldn't deny the truth in his words. Back in the hospital, Adam sat in a small waiting room, his head in his hands. The weight of the day, the months of stress, and years of fighting alone were catching up to him. Sylvia approached, sitting down beside him. She's in good hands, she said softly. Adam nodded, though his shoulders remained tense. I don't know what comes next. After everything we've been through, it feels like the fight's never really over. It isn't, Sylvia said, surprising herself with her honesty. But you don't have to do it alone anymore. That's the difference. Adam glanced at her, a flicker of hope in his eyes. You really believe that? Sylvia hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, I do. As night fell, the hospital settled into a quieter rhythm. Lily was on her way, the surgery schedule was finalized, and the pieces were falling into place. But Sylvia couldn't shake the feeling that the stakes were higher than ever. Elon, standing by a window overlooking the city lights, seemed unbothered by the tension. When she approached, he turned, offering her a faint smile. Big day, she said. It's not over yet, he replied. No, Sylvia agreed. But for the first time, it feels like there's a real chance it could end well. Elon nodded, his gaze drifting back to the skyline. Hope is a powerful thing. As they stood in silence, watching the city below, Sylvia couldn't help but marvel at the journey they had taken. Whatever happened next, one thing was clear, this wasn't just about Lily or Adam anymore. It was about proving that even in the darkest moments, a single act of kindness could change everything. The first rays of dawn spilled into the hospital, casting a warm glow on the otherwise sterile environment. Adam sat beside a gurney, holding Lily's hand as she rested. She had arrived late in the night, her fragile body looking even smaller beneath the blankets. Sylvia and Elon stood nearby, giving the siblings space. Dr. Weiss entered the room, his expression calm but serious. We'll need to start prepping her soon, he said, addressing Adam. Adam nodded, his grip on Lily's hand tightening. You'll do everything you can, right? Dr. Weiss placed a reassuring hand on Adam's shoulder. We will. She's strong, and so are you. That counts for more than you know. Lily stirred, her eyes fluttering open. When she saw Adam, she managed a small smile. Are we in Germany? Yeah, we made it, Adam said, his voice thick with emotion. Lily's gaze shifted to Elon, her brow furrowing. You're the man Adam kept talking about. Are you really Elon Musk? Elon stepped closer, crouching down so he was at eye level with her. That's me. And I hear you're the bravest person in the room. Lily giggled weakly, though her eyes sparkled with curiosity. Do you build spaceships? I do, Elon said, smiling. But today, I'm here to help build something even more important, your future. Lily's smile grew, her small hand reaching out to touch his. Thank you. Elon's expression softened, and he nodded. You're welcome. Now you just focus on getting better. The hours leading up to the surgery felt like an eternity. Adam paced the waiting room, his nerves frayed to the breaking point. Sylvia and Elon sat nearby, their presence a quiet anchor in the storm. You don't have to stay here, you know, Adam said suddenly, his voice strained. Elon looked up from his laptop, his expression calm. We're not going anywhere. Sylvia nodded in agreement. You've got enough to worry about without being alone on top of it. Adam sank into a chair, his head in his hands. I don't know how to do this. Waiting, hoping, it's harder than I thought. Sylvia leaned forward, her tone gentle. It's because you care. That's what makes it hard. But it's also what makes it worth it. Adam glanced at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. Thanks. Hours passed, and finally, Dr. Weiss appeared in the waiting room. His face was calm but unreadable, sending a ripple of tension through the room. Adam shot to his feet. Is she okay? Did everything go all right? Dr. Weiss smiled, a flicker of warmth breaking through his professional demeanor. The surgery was a success. Lily is stable and recovering in the ICU. She'll need time to heal, but everything went as planned. Adam staggered back, his legs nearly giving out as the weight of the news hit him. Sylvia rushed to steady him, while Elon's expression shifted to one of quiet relief. "Can I see her?" Adam asked, his voice trembling. Dr. Weiss nodded. "She's still asleep, but you can sit with her." As Adam disappeared down the hallway, Sylvia turned to Elon. "You did it," she said, her voice a mixture of awe and disbelief. Elon shook his head. "Adam and Lily did it. We just helped." Sylvia crossed her arms, a small smile tugging at her lips. "You really don't take credit for anything, do you?" Elon shrugged, his gaze distant. "It's not about credit. It's about doing the right thing." The rest of the day passed in a blur of relief and quiet celebration. Lily woke briefly, her smile lighting up the room when she saw Adam at her bedside. For the first time in years, the weight of uncertainty seemed to lift, replaced by a fragile but growing sense of hope. Sylvia found herself watching Elon closely, trying to piece together the enigma that was this man. He wasn't the caricature she'd once imagined, a detached billionaire with no concept of real life. He was something far more complicated, and far more human. As the sun set over the city, the hospital lights flickering on one by one, Sylvia turned to Elon. "So what happens now?" He glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. "Now we make sure they have the support they need to move forward." "And then?" "And then what?" Elon smiled faintly. "And then we find the next story." The next morning, the hospital buzzed with quiet activity. Lily was still in the ICU, her monitors beeping steadily as she slept. Adam sat by her side, his face a mixture of exhaustion and relief. He hadn't left her room all night, unwilling to let her out of his sight even for a moment. Sylvia and Elon stood just outside, speaking in hushed tones. "She's stable," Sylvia said, glancing through the window. "That's a good sign, right?" Elon nodded. "It's the best sign. The hardest part is over." Sylvia studied him for a moment, her curiosity bubbling to the surface. "You really believe in what you're doing, don't you? Helping people like this, it's not just a PR move or some pet project for you." Elon turned to her, his expression sincere. "I've always believed that if you have the ability to help, you should. It's not about PR, and it's not about proving anything. It's about making the world better, one step at a time." Sylvia folded her arms, leaning against the wall. "And what about the ones you can't help? Doesn't it bother you that there are so many people out there who need this kind of support but don't get it?" Elon's gaze grew distant, his voice quieter. "It does. But that's why you keep going. You do what you can, and you hope it inspires others to do the same. It's not about solving every problem, it's about starting a ripple." Sylvia tilted her head, considering his words. "A ripple, huh? That's a big way of looking at things." Elon smiled faintly. "Big problems require big perspectives." Later that day, Adam emerged from Lily's room, his exhaustion giving way to cautious optimism. He found Elon and Sylvia waiting for him in the hallway. "She's awake," Adam said, his voice cracking slightly. "She's weak, but she's smiling." Elon nodded, a small but genuine smile crossing his face. "That's the first step. She'll need time and support, but she's on her way." Adam swallowed hard, his gratitude spilling over. "I don't even know how to thank you for this. For everything." "You don't have to," Elon said simply. "Just focus on being there for her. That's the most important thing." Sylvia stepped forward, resting a hand on Adam's shoulder. "He's right. You've already done the hardest part, keeping hope alive when everything seemed impossible. The rest is just taking it one day at a time." Adam nodded, his eyes misting over. "I'll never forget what you've both done for us." As the day wore on, news of Lily's story began to spread. Hospital staff, inspired by the family's journey, shared the tale with colleagues, who shared it with others. Soon, word reached the media, and within hours, the story of the young girl saved by a stranger's extraordinary generosity was making headlines. Elon, true to form, declined interviews and deflected attention. When asked about his role, he simply said, "It's not about me. It's about Lily and Adam. They're the real heroes." But the ripple effect was undeniable. Donations poured into the hospital's foundation, earmarked for families in similar situations. Conversations ignited on social media about the importance of compassion, community, and stepping up to help when it mattered most. Sylvia watched it all unfold with a mixture of pride and awe. She had started this journey with a sharp tongue and a skeptical heart, but now she found herself profoundly changed. That evening, as the city settled into a quiet rhythm, Sylvia approached Elon in the hospital's garden. He was seated on a bench, gazing up at the stars. "You're leaving soon, aren't you?" she asked, sitting down beside him. Elon nodded. "Once I'm sure they're set up for the next steps. They'll need long-term support, and I want to make sure they have everything they need." Sylvia was quiet for a moment, then said, "You've changed how I see things, you know. I came on this journey expecting to confirm every cynical thought I've ever had about people like you. But I was wrong." Elon glanced at her, a faint smile playing on his lips. "It's not about proving people wrong. It's about showing them what's possible." Sylvia laughed softly, shaking her head. "Always the optimist, huh?" "Not always," Elon admitted. "But enough to keep going." As they sat together under the stars, Sylvia felt a rare sense of peace, a reminder that, even in a world full of challenges, there were still stories of hope and humanity worth telling. The morning dawned crisp and clear, sunlight streaming through the hospital windows. In Lily's room, her laughter filled the air as Adam read her a story from a book he had bought during their journey. Her cheeks had regained a hint of color, and though she was still fragile, the light in her eyes spoke of a future she now dared to imagine. In the hallway, Elon stood with Dr. Weiss, going over the final arrangements. The doctor nodded appreciatively. "Your involvement has made all the difference. I've never seen a case turn around this quickly, not just medically, but emotionally." Elon smiled faintly. "It's a team effort. Adam and Lily did the hard part, they fought to survive. We just gave them the tools to keep going." As the group gathered in the hospital garden later that day, the atmosphere was one of quiet celebration. Adam and Lily sat together on a bench, her head resting against his shoulder. Sylvia stood nearby, arms crossed but smiling warmly, while Elon spoke with a hospital administrator about additional funding for similar cases. Finally, Elon turned back to the group. "I'll be heading out soon," he said. "But I'll keep in touch. Anything you need, anything at all, just call." Adam stood, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't have the words to thank you. For Lily, for me, for everything." "You don't need to thank me," Elon said, shaking his hand. "Just take care of each other." As he turned to leave, Lily's small voice stopped him. "Mr. Musk?" Elon turned, his expression softening. "Yes, Lily. Can I ride one of your rockets someday?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with childlike wonder. Elon chuckled, crouching down to meet her gaze. "I'll make sure there's a seat with your name on it. But first, you have to promise to get all the way better." Lily grinned, nodding enthusiastically. "I promise." On the ride back to the airfield, Sylvia found herself reflecting on the whirlwind journey they had taken. She turned to Elon, who was gazing out the window. "You know," she said, "I've spent most of my career writing about the flaws in people like you. But this, what you've done, it's going to make me rethink everything." Elon's lips quirked into a faint smile. "Maybe that's the real story," he said. "Not what I've done, but what you'll do next." Sylvia tilted her head, considering his words. You really think stories like this can make a difference? They already do, Elon replied. The question is, what will people take away from them? As the jet ascended into the sky, Sylvia couldn't help but replay the events of the past few days in her mind. It wasn't just a story about a girl and her brother fighting against impossible odds, it was a story about humanity, about courage, and about the ripples that one act of kindness could create. And so, to the audience who has followed this tale, what would you do if faced with an impossible choice? Could you step outside your comfort zone to help someone in need? And most importantly, what kind of ripple will you leave behind in the world? The answers, like the stars above, are infinite, and yours to discover.